And welcome back to the Masters of Modern. I'm your host, Alex Kessler, and here with my co-host, Ben Bateman, and we are talking about all of the different creature synergy decks that are no longer viable in Modern. Why is that? Is there a way to fix it? We got Twitter interaction involved, but this is the Masters of Modern podcast. We're a podcast talks about mostly Modern, though other things in Magic, sometimes called the MMcast, and we're here today to hang out. Hi, Ben.
What's up? How you doing? Excited to be here talking Magic the Gathering with you. Missed a week last week, I believe, and this week we're talking about the subject that is near and dear to my heart in tribal Magic.
First off, a small shout out. Thank you to Channel Fireball, where we post this podcast beyond YouTube and the podcast apps near you, as well as TCG Player, which if you're looking to buy cards, make sure to check out below. There's a link. We get a TCG affiliate link. You help us, we help you. It's all good for everybody. But before and as part of those relationships, we're doing our trivia. So today, the way this works is I'm going to ask about a trivia question. He is going to have to answer it. And this is all about likes and subscribes. You're all betting your likes and subscribes. If you get the trivia question not 100% correct or slightly incorrect or any type of wrong, you have to hit that like and subscribe button and comment below with your answers while Ben's hemming and hawing. So, Ben.
Yes.
Humans are the number one most printed creature type of all time.
Okay.
More of them than any other one. What is the second, the third, and the fourth?
Do I need them in order, or if I just get 2, 3, and 4, I win?
You get them of,
All right. So let's think about this. The way this question is constructed makes me think it has to be somewhat obvious because you're asking for 3 specific things to be pulled out of thin air without any discernible statistics. However, one of them is probably surprising. So 2 of these are probably common, and the third one is going to be like, oh, yeah, of course. So you go back to the beginning. Oh, man. It feels like it's probably the tribes. You know, like it feels like it's the popular classic since the beginning tribes. I'm gonna say goblins. I'm gonna say, is that wrong?
You have 3 guesses. You get 3 things.
Goblins. I'm gonna say elves, and I'm gonna say zombies.
Goblins are not anywhere in the top 10. In the top 10, both elves and zombies make an appearance. Zombies is the 6th most common, and elves is the 8th most common creature type. Number 2 is wizards.
Oh yeah, I should have thought about
number
that.
Number 3 is warriors, and number 4 is soldiers. The next species that's a thing is spirits is number 5.
Wow, I guess because the reason that is that wizard is a subtype on tons of creature types, and that spirit has existed as spirits, but it's also existed as like multiple varieties of spirit. It's existed as like ghosts.
There's a lot of ghosts and there's a lot of undead. So spirits is 5 and zombies is 6, right? So both of those. Number 7 is cleric. Which I was surprised by. Number 8 is elves. Number 9 is elementals. And number 10 is shaman. Shaman being on the top 10 was a surprise to me. There's just no good shaman tribal. There just happens to be a lot of shamans around.
Well, guys, if you were smarter than me and got those right, then you don't have to like, subscribe, or comment. But if you missed them, like I did, you've got to like and leave a comment and subscribe and support this show.
By going to shop on tcgplayer.com. All right. So speaking of creature types in general, the onus for this episode is that, people feel that creature decks in Modern are unviable. That is not 100% true. For instance, Elementals has been a great deck since Modern Horizons 2. Before that, at different points in Magic history, spirits, elves, goblins, merfolk, humans, even slivers, etc., elementals, as we mentioned, have all seen some amount of constructed competitive play, to the extent that merfolk was the most, is I still believe the deck the deck to have won the most. It's and an Affinity are tied for winning the most Grand Prix of all time in Modern. But of recent years, most of them have been bad. One of them is back. Merfolk is the 13th most played deck in Modern, and at the Magic 30 event, placed at least 2 decks in the top 8. And I believe number 9th place was also a Merfolk deck. You played the Merfolk deck, so we're going to start with a little bit of a Merfolk primer. Why did you choose the deck other than that I harassed you to choose it? And what do you think some of the strengths of the decks are? What are some of the weaknesses, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, I mean, when I was thinking about playing at Magic 30, I hadn't played a game of Paper Modern in a while, and my first instinct was to play Murktide because blue-red decks, generally speaking, are kind of my jam, and spell-based decks I'm usually good at playing. I've played a lot of Merfolk. I have played it in Modern before, but I had played it in Highlander a lot, a different version of the deck, obviously, but you know, it still plays in similar patterns and still wants to curve in the same way, and so I was pretty familiar with a lot of the play patterns and the cards. And it just seemed simple. Like it seemed like a deck that if you curved out correctly. Now, I was a little bit incorrect in that assertion. It's not as simple as it seems. It is not your dad's Merfolk deck. It has definitely evolved, and it was a very fun deck to play. But there were some nuances that if you screw up, they really make you realize the paper thin margin that Modern is built on, and that's because the CMC in Modern has reduced almost like a full point since the days when Merfolk used to be good, because free spells weren't a thing in Modern back then. Like the fact that there's as many interactions that cost 0 now, and so many more things in a tribal deck, like or in any deck that have been pushed now that cost 1 and 2. Any Lord in Merfolk that costs 3 is unplayable at this point. You can't play Moral Regery. Even cards that cost 2 that are not like the most streamlined version aren't good enough anymore. And that's fairly indicative, I think, of just where Modern is as a format. You have to come out with enough velocity that if somebody has Fury in their deck, because people play it, you don't just auto lose. You know, you have to have like created enough of a board state. So,
and we're going to talk about Fury a lot today, but I think one of the other things with Merfolk that's interesting, you know, we've always talked about how if you're going to be playing one of these tribal decks, if you're going to be playing one of these creature based decks, you want that deck to be attacking the format in a way that one of the other ones isn't doing, right? And Merfolk is doing that in a few different accesses, but one of them, which we'll get to in a second, but one of them is also its ability to protect its own creatures. With between Savolin, Kira, and now Hexcatcher,
yeah.
You have 3 different really powerful options that can fight off of Fury, can fight off the interaction spell someone might be trying to play against you. And a lot of them, because of Aether Vial, you can even cast at instant speed in response. That gives Merfolk that much of a bump while also creating a pretty intense clock against your opponent that on top of that is playing what to me feels the most like a Delver deck in Legacy, in the sense that it's playing a land destruction game plan. It's maybe the best land destruction deck in the format. Sorry, Ponza, in the set, and maybe the best land destruction best dedicated land destruction Magic deck in the last 20 years.
Now, I think it's interesting you say this, because what you're going to say is that, you know, Tideshaper and Spreading Seas are these huge pieces and pillars of the format. And they've been in the list. They were in the list when I was playing. Tideshaper's a 4 of in the main. New card, Modern Horizons 2, I believe 2 or 1. I think it's 2. But 1 blue, it gets +1/+1 if your opponent has an island. And for 1 as kicker, when you play it, you can basically make one of their lands an island for as long as Tideshaper is in play. Spreading Seas is a classic. We've talked about that card for years. And I know some of the lists now are starting to add even more elements to that. When I was playing it, Spreading Seas wasn't in the main, and this is like a month ago. What's interesting about Tideshaper, though, is you get a little bit tricked into the idea that that card is going to be able to tempo your opponents off of their lands. And the amount of clean land options that exist in Modern now, between fetches for triomes, and there's so much good interaction now for them to just kill your Tideshaper, it doesn't actually do what you're hoping it does. I'm sure it can. I'm sure there's a magical Christmas Land version where you trick somebody's land base so early in the game that you're able to just roll them. But I tried it all throughout Magic 30, like different times in the game, and I just found that Tideshaper's ability was almost never relevant. Like it almost never did anything for me. They would just like kill it when they needed to and get their land back. And so I do think I do think the LD plan you're talking about, if they commit to that plan with Spreading Seas and Magus of the Moon and things like that, is really strong. And I do think that it goes back to what you were saying a second ago. We always have talked about how tribal decks have to be somewhat unique or disruptive. I mean, this is classically like why Humans was originally good. This is, again, like after Humans was good, it's why Spirits was good for a period of time. These decks are able to present a clock and interact at the same time. And that's why it doesn't matter how much power they pump into any particular archetype, just the +1/+1 Lord anymore, or just how many of those you can pack into a deck. It's not good enough, because zombies would be incredible if that was the case. It's just, you just have to be doing something else.
Yeah, I think there's, there's definitely points to what you're saying. I mean, part of it is also just it makes your creatures unblockable, right? That also helps. I also think like it's matchup dependent. Now with, depending on how powerful Urza Saga is, Merfolk gains a lot of points for that, because it does just straight up kill an Urza Saga if you turn it into an island. That's a rules interaction that people don't always understand. Just the way it works is the way sagas are templated. It dies if it has more lore counters on it than total chapters of the saga. And so if you turn it into a basic island, it doesn't lose the type saga, because that's on the enchantment half of the card. So it is a saga with more counters on it than there are chapters, because there's no longer any chapters on it, because it's a basic island. And then so they have to sacrifice it. That's also true with Blood Moon. Blood Moon does the exact same thing. And so I think that also kind of wavers in its favor. It doesn't. And then the other one is I think why Merfolk is kind of come back as the premier version of this style of deck is Subtlety, and it being the blue one. And Subtlety, right now, the biggest problem these creatures decks have are the pitch elementals between Fury and Solitude. And Subtlety, as we've kind of brought up a few times on this podcast, is the Frost Titan of this cycle, in the sense that it is really good at fighting other elementals. And so you're able to punish them for trying to do that to you, while also sometimes just having a 4-mana 3/3 flyer that can beat down as you need to, and be a decent creature counterspell. So I think that there is, especially in a deck like Merfolk, that just like needs your opponent to stumble for a second, so that you can just keep bashing them in the face with your 4-mana unblockable island walking lords. And that's one of the reasons it's been able, between the ability for it to protect its creatures from the stuff like Fury and Solitude with its basic creatures that it's already doing, the fact that it kind of operates at instant speed to be able to dodge Fury a little bit as well because of Aether Vial, and some of its cards have flash. And then lastly, because of Subtlety, you're able to kind of protect your army of things enough to be able to murder your opponent.
I will say that the old version of Merfolk from years ago that used to win GPs and stuff, the biggest difference was that version of the deck mostly just curved out. Like you definitely had tricks, like Mirror Regery and the way you sequence that with your lands untapping, or like sometimes creating Island Walk with a Spreading Seas, or how would you sequence your Master of Waves, whatever. These were decisions you had to make back in the day, but the margin wasn't so thin, right? Nowadays, Subtlety is a fascinating card to play with. And it was my honestly, my biggest misunderstanding was how to properly play with that card, because I watched a ton of tutorials. Nikachu was kind enough to send me some notes as far as like how to do it. And I found in a lot of the videos I was watching that some players, they'd burn their Subtlety on like turn 1, right? Like they'd play it aggressively. And I like didn't know when to do that. So I was sort of just confused by it. And like it is card disadvantage if you're not doing it in the right moment. On top of that, the other card that is so significant that you mentioned a second ago is Hexcatcher, Medallion Hexcatcher. And what's so fascinating about that card, blue 1 for a 1/1 flash, other Merfolk you control get +1/+1. You can sacrifice a Merfolk to counter target non-creature spell unless its controller pays 1. That in itself, right? Just if you flash that card in for blue 1, it functions as like a force spike just on its own. You just get to flash it in, and if they don't have enough mana, you counter their spell. So that's already like a pretty good piece of interaction. They've turned, even if you don't have another Merfolk on the battlefield, right? They've literally turned one of the spells in the deck, a Lord, into an instant speed piece of interaction, which is an incredible add for the deck. But the other part about that's so hard is knowing how do you sequence that card with the Merfolk you have on the battlefield to protect the other ones, because you want to maintain critical mass. And then you add in the fact that Mutavault's one of your lands. which like was another head trip for me that was so hard because I kept finding that I would like draw mutavaults at the wrong time. I would need double blue, and then I would have this mutavault. I couldn't curve out correctly. You need to like leave mutavault open sometimes so you can activate it to have it to sacrifice the Hexcatcher. It's a very complicated tribal deck. It was actually much harder to play than I was expecting.
And I think like to the point on Hexcatcher, that's the thing that put it over the edge, right? Like before Dominaria United, which is where Hexcatcher is from, Merfolk wasn't in the top whatever conversation. But that card single-handedly offers so many lines single-handedly that are also able to cover a lot of its problematic matchups that it really pushed it over the edge. Oh, I now have the ability to stop removal spells, which is one of my big banes of my existence. I have the ability to put pressure on my opponent's mana so that they can't cast their non creature spells at the time that they want to, because at any moment I can just counter it because I can sacrifice all the creatures I have. But if they don't do it, I'm now presenting a lord. My creatures are gaining mass and doing a lot of damage to them, and they often have a way to get in around whatever they're trying to do to stabilize. And that's not to mention adding the layer of just like the brain power to keep track of that. Like it is like just even playing against a Merfolk deck, being ready to know what tricks they have up their sleeve, from Hexcatcher to Trickster to Savol, like Savolin, or like if you have an Aether Vial on 3, it's almost impossible to kill any creature without expecting for your mana, your thing just to not do anything for free, right? Like between Savolin and Kira in games 2 and 3, how do you even kill a creature when they have Aether Vial on 3? So I think that's one of the reasons it's pushed it over the edge, which I think is really interesting because the other ones didn't get pushed over the edge, right? Of the classic creature type deck styles, goblins, elves, zombies, merfolk, humans, etc., a lot of them got similarly powerful lords out of Dominaria United. Goblins got one where I think you sacrifice a goblin and then you can exile 2 cards to draw into. Or 1 card. Green got one. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield, you can pay a green to draw a card. So like a pseudo glimpse of nature, and neither of those put it over the edge. So I did I want to ask you first, and then I did ask Twitter earlier, like if you could design, and it was for elves, because that's, I think the elves and goblins are like the 2 additional ones that people want to be playable. Got right now in the format, goblins is the 28th most played deck in the format, and elves is the 44th most played deck in the format. And at least the case of elves, it's not because it's that good. It's just because people are really dedicated to the deck. No offense to people that love elves decks. It just has such a terrible fury matchup.
That was the last thing I was going to say. The last thing I was going to say when you talked about the Hexcatcher, before we move on, is how good that card is against fury. Right? That's the thing, is like the fact that you now have an instant speed lord. Merfolk had never had a castable instant speed lord before. Right? It had always had the ability to do it with Aether Vial. Your opponent could play around that, though. The fact that you can just hard cast it, so they have to account for the fact that if you have that in hand, it forces them to completely play that card differently. There are 2-for-1 ace in the hole that's going to beat you. And then Sveloon, obviously, you mentioned, is just an extremely powerful ad. It is proof of how good a 3-drop has to be to maintain its place in these decks. Like,
things have ward. It's indestructible. You draw cards whenever you do damage.
It's like a 3-4, like, and the deck plays 4 of them usually, and it's legendary. Yep. So it's evidence of how good it is. But yeah, jumping over to I think what would push those other decks over the edge. It was your question. What would
before we jump into that, when we talked earlier, like how did the decks win? Right. Let's start with elves because I think that's the one I have the most content. I guess let's do goblins because it's a shorter conversation than elves. Because I think goblins is actually closer to being, because of the Snoop combo, because you can have Snoop and Kiki Jiki, and you have Goblin Matron, I think, is in the deck now, or in the format. So you have a lot of ways to take that deck already is like explosive, right? Because in all of these types of situations, you want your A plan, your B plan. And Birthing Pod was a great example of this, where like back in the day, Birthing Pod had the A plan of the combo, but then had the B plan of just like, I'm going to beat you down with really strong hate bears. And you can't interact very easily with the hate bears that are fighting you because A, they're hate bears, and B, because if you waste all your removal on my Birds of Paradise is now a 4/5 because of Gavony Township, or just like the 3/4s that I have on my deck for funsies, you'll lose to the combo as I Birthing Pod for it, and you didn't have interaction for it, and you tapped out. And Splinter Twin was the same way, right? Splinter Twin was, I'm going to do a classic tempo beatdown control strategy, and the moment you try and stop my control beatdown strategy is the moment that I'll flash in a Pestermite at the end of your turn. Pestermite. No, yeah.
Yeah,
Flash and Pestermite at the end of your turn, untap and Splinter Twin and win the game. And
he had to double check. It's been so long since Splinter Twin. He had to just double check if the card was called Pestermite. That is how long.
In my defense, there's a lot of there's a lot of fairy cards with the exact same name. Yeah. Pestermite, Splinter Fright, which is not a fairy, but
Spencermite.
I was thinking of specifically Stutter Sprite is the one I was worried I was saying.
One of my favorites.
Which has been more relevant more recently. But Goblins offers that, right? You're able to play a classic mono red beatdown strategy, and then you just have this infinite combo in your deck on the side. The problem is Fury. The problem is Solitude. The problem is that it's just there's two amazing instant speed removals. There's multiple instant speed amazing removal spells in Modern, and there's like insane free board wipes that can be cast on turn 3 before you maybe can put your whole combo together. And I think that's where Goblin's big limitation is.
Goblins, I think, it's kind of endemic of the color, right? That's the thing about if you compare Merfolk to Goblins and then Goblins to Elves, and you think about it in each case, what's the strength of this color? What does it do, right? Well, blue decks have this built-in thing of, if I get to do this tricky thing that's going to get around your game plan. Like, it's instant speed. It's always been that way. And so they continue to push that agenda, and that tends to be the way those cards are designed. With a Goblins deck, because it's red, it's usually like you get some value if you sacrifice things. It's like a piece of red that's always mattered. There's like damage, like things die and deal damage. That's like another piece of its design. It's usually like more about chaos and damage, which unfortunately, if your opponent has an answer, chaos and damage doesn't get you card advantage. So that's why when they print stuff like Muxus, like Muxus was a big deal for Goblins. That was like a card that mattered a lot, right? That's because Muxus got you extreme card advantage, which is not normally what Red's going to get. You mentioned,
which by the way, Muxus is the card I would say should be printed in the Modern to make Goblins viable, because that's what it's missing, right? Like, it was a tier 1 historic deck for a long time, and then just doesn't have those tools in Modern.
Yeah. So Muxus is, I think Muxus would probably, I don't know if it would make it tier 1 because it does cost 6. But the fact that you have Skirk Prospector and Snoop and Kiki, there's a lot going on in Modern with Matron now existing that probably Muxus would at least give it a chance, because it's one of the only reset cards that Goblins has that's actually like powerful.
And that I think is one of, and I think the New Lord was a close option. It's just it's let me look up exactly what it's called. Rundvelt Horde Master, a 1 red Goblin Warrior. Other goblins get +1/+1. It's a 1/1. Whenever Rundvelt Horde Master, another goblin you control, dies, exile the top card of your library. If it's a goblin creature card, you may cast that card until the end of your next turn. The problem, though it does let you do it until the end of your next turn, I think this card's close, right? I think this kind of plays a little bit in that space where it does give you card advantage. It's good against Fury. I think it's just Goblins doesn't have a strong enough A plan, like its aggro plan isn't strong enough really in Modern, while playing with the cards for its B plan, the Snoop combo, that it's a little bit easier to just like erase what you're working on, and the fact that it doesn't work as quickly as it maybe needs to. So I think there's a way to fix it. I just think like card advantage, making it a little bit grindier and a little bit more interactive. I think that's, to me, maybe the bigger issue that Merfolk does have, right? Like, there's not really a way that Goblins stops their opponent from doing anything. So unless they do their thing or they can be aggro, if your opponent tries to stop you at all, you're dead in the water, and you can't really do anything to stop them. So it's
I was going to say, the other thing with Merfolk that stands out when you compare, again, just effects and the idea of winning with a critical mass creature deck is Merfolk Trickster is an extremely powerful trick. Like, it's aggressively costed, right? You're just literally playing a combat trick that gets you a body, and it's a good creature that's easy to cast. There's no real drawback. So like, because it's funny, this card, the Rundvelt Horde Master, it's doing basically exactly what we were just talking about.
Right.
It's kind of doing the blue thing.
And
It's like
yeah.
it's getting you value, right? It's like almost like Wizards was aware of the fact that like, okay, we need to make sure that red has this ability that if it gets blown out, it actually can do something with what it's losing. But the problem is Merfolk has like, how many lords does it play now? It plays like 16 lords in the deck now, or at least 12. So when you draw a card off the top, very often you're just going to replace the lord they've just killed. They literally designed Lord of Atlantis and Goblin King at the same time. They're the same card, except that one of them costs 2 and one of them costs 3. It's the actual card design space wants Merfolk to be cheaper and more aggressive, and it wants goblins to be a little clunkier because they're red and they're chaotic, and that's the point. And the fact that like that one difference, honestly, might even just be the difference. If Goblin King had just cost the same thing as Lord of Atlantis all these years, goblins might have just been a thing, like a long time ago.
I mean, goblins have been a tier 1 deck in Legacy, right? At the same time in Merfolk, but it wasn't. It was because they had stuff like Goblin Piledriver and Goblin, which we have in Modern,
Right.
but we don't have Goblin Lackey, right? Goblin Lackey was like the big thing where you were able to like turn to get a Siege Gang commander and play, and then wasteland your opponent out of the game while you're winning off of Lackey and Vile, and
Right.
which is kind of what Merfolk does to some extent right now. It's not like cheating in 5 drops, but it is like keeping your opponents off of colors, tempoing your opponents out by countering their spells or bouncing their spells or bouncing their creatures or tapping their creatures and beating them down with stuff. Where goblins, I think to me they're not aggressive enough. They don't have stuff like Hexcatcher that can interact with spells and keep their player honest on the other side, and their combo isn't redundant enough. Maybe is kind of your point with the Lord of Atlantis, right? Lord of Atlantis, the Lord game plan is a very redundant game plan A, and Goblins' very redundant game plan A is a 1/1 based aggro strategy, and that isn't enough to cut it in Modern. And so it's figuring out how to get around that. They have value engines, so what they need, I think, to me more is ways to interact or ways to upgrade their beatdown plan, while benefiting the Snoop combo.
I think Goblins curves out. Sorry. Merfolk, if your opponent doesn't do anything, like, what's the turn it wins? Does it just win on 4? What, you basically get a 1/1 on turn 1 that attacks for 2 on turn 2 with a Lord. Turn 3, you play another Lord. So now you're attacking for 5. So now it's your turn 3 and they've taken 7. And you play 2 more Lords on turn 4 because you're playing 12 in the deck. At that point, you're attacking for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then the first one, 12 more. So I guess they don't quite die, but you can still play that 1 drop on turn 3. And at that point, if you curve out,
do you beat that curve if you play Aether Vial on turn 1? Because don't you turn 1 Aether Vial, turn 2 you play a Lord and a 1 drop, you don't get in for 2 damage that turn, but then turn 3 you play 2 Lords and then you pump up, and so now you're attacking for 1, 2, it's 2 drops, so 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 7, and then the next turn you attack. That's the way to do lethal by turn 4 is Aether Vial on turn 1.
Yeah, you can also just, if you played another 1 drop on turn 3 along with your 2 drop, then you just have another. But yeah, the point being, the deck, because of the density of Lords, even with nothing else, with no tricks whatsoever, can just curve out and win on turn 4, which I think is like that's like the redheaded stepchild plan of the deck, and it is still a really good one.
Yeah, and like Goblins has like Munitions Expert, right, where it allows it to do damage equal to how much goblins you control to target Planeswalker or creature.
Yeah.
But compare that to Hexcatcher Mage, right, where like I get to sacrifice creatures to counter spells, and so all of your interaction is made basically unusable. And this is just like, I can kill a creature if I'm winning already. And so I think that's kind of, to me, the like limitations of the deck that I'd want to see something a little bit more from. And I think that's possible. Like Goblins is already probably pretty good too, and you'll just punishing stumbling opponents, which I think one of the reasons that Goblins is a more viable deck in Modern right now than Elves, which we'll get to next, is because it is someone that offers that Splinter Twin question, right? Of like, what do I answer between these two sides? Merfolk is a beatdown deck that plays with a tempo strategy, and that offers 2 angles of attack that players have to be able to deal with both. Goblins offers a aggro deck that has a combo deck on the top end, which is a thing you have to stumble on. Then you get to Elves, who also has an aggro deck that has a combo deck on it, except it requires everything to work at sorcery speed and to have actually no interaction happen to you. Otherwise, your entire thing falls apart.
Merfolk functions in a lot of ways, the way that it actually interacts with your opponent. It functions a lot like the old Humans deck played, the one from a few years ago, because like it's not doing the same thing necessarily, but your interaction comes in the form of your creatures. Your Thalias are going to make all of their stuff cost a little bit more. Your Kite Sail Freebooter, was that card was called? The black one, two, takes a card out of their hand. You know, like just the fact that you have those two cards as your 2-drops, and then your Meddling Mage. So it's doing a lot of the same stuff where you're tempoing them out while advancing your board state. And that is kind of the template for the most successful decks that have been triable in Modern. So we talked about Goblins. You mentioned Elves and what Elves is doing that's different than Goblins, right? Elves has the same issue that Goblins has, but in some ways, and in fact, it's already doing the Muxus thing. Like that's what Elves has that Goblins doesn't have, right? It already has that effect. It's got the chain that you can draw lots of cards, that you can fill your hand up. It has the ability
to use it.
Yeah, it has the ability to curve out into your Archdruid and your, what's the name of that? Elves Azuri? Archdruid Azuri, like it can combo out for like a giant creature, like a Crater Hoof or whatever. I haven't looked at an Elves list in a minute, but like that's, and then there's the more aggressive ones that are trying to deal damage with like Shaman of the Pack and stuff like that. And they've even gone as far as to continue printing Elves cards into Modern, right? We didn't used to have Quirion Ranger. That wasn't in Modern. We didn't used to have, what are some of the other really good elves that I feel like have been added over the last few years?
Elvish Warmaster, 1 green, Elf Warrior, 2/2. Whenever one or more elves you control enter the battlefield under your control, create a 1/1 elf, green Elf Warrior creature token. It only can trigger once per turn. You have stuff like, well, you now have Besieger who endures, which is obviously a big deal. That's like kind of the big ones. You have the new card, right? The new Leaf Crown Visionary, green, Elf Druid. Other elves you control get +1/+1. Whenever you cast an elf spell, you may pay a green if you do draw a card. The problem to me with the elf deck is kind of twofold. And it is a little bit maybe the problem with Goblins, and maybe this is another answer. This is the deck that folds the Fury the most. Because everything in Elves is happening at, other than Collected Company, everything else Elves is doing is happening at sorcery speed. You're playing creatures into play that then need to untap, and then what they do is they generate mana to cast other things that need to untap. Right? Like they're even if you're doing this stuff at instant speed, playing Collected Company, getting that stuff into play on the turn before, with Aether Vial, your game plan is to cast sorcery speed things on your next turn. And so any player playing Fury, any player, and then add that layer Solitude and Prismatic Ending and the 3 different lightning bolt variants, and just like how do you get past that level of interaction in the format being the most played type of format, and then also deal with the fact that Murktide Regents are coming your way? How do you deal with the fact that people are playing these really powerful threats that you need to deal with that you don't, like you're a mono green or a green black deck that doesn't have very good interaction, versus Elves, which we've talked to is interacting at every level, versus Goblins, which has instant speed, oops, I win moments that offer an alternative that, and their game plan allows them to attack still. That's the other problem with Elves is when Elves' game plan A isn't beat down, it's ramp. And it's ramping with the creatures that should be beating down. Its B plan is either making infinite. Its A plan is either making enough mana to be able to do something broken with Azuri, or put enough creatures into play with that mana to be able to kill them with Shaman in the Pack. And both of those involve having a lot of creatures in play in a format where keeping a lot of X1s in play is hard.
I think the left turn that I see that Elves took, not the deck itself, but I think the design perspective from Wizards and what they wanted a green deck to be able to do, is that with the two, traditionally green does a bunch of stuff, right? If you look at what green's design philosophy is over the last few years, its major piece of creature interaction has been fight. That's been like green's thing. They print a lot of things where your creature fights their creature. They have printed a bunch of Gaia's, what's the intervention, heroic intervention, those like green, combat tricks, like the one that we previewed all those years ago. +2/+2 hexproof, indestructible, instant speed spells. That's like a thing green gets a lot. And then graveyard interaction, which is like a thing that's newer, and then finally naturalize effects. These are like the places that green will tend to go, right? Unless you're just going to beef some creatures up.
Mm-hmm.
So the two opportunities to present to print free spells into Modern, one of them was a double naturalize, and the other one was graveyard interaction. If Endurance had been a 2/2 creature and it had come down and up to 2 target creatures you control get indestructible and hexproof till end of turn or something like that. Like if that's what they had decided to print.
I mean, you could print all. I think you could. I think that card could just be all creatures
you
gain
control.
hexproof. All creatures
Yeah.
gain hexproof is like
You choose for one yourself to like make your creatures
heroic
hexproof
intervention, right?
Yeah. That's like a green thing that gets printed all the time. I think that's the biggest miss. Because if green had that, the way that Elves draws cards and how easy it would be for them to pitch cards, I think Elves would probably be a tier 1 deck. Because it would just main deck 4 of those, and it would be really, really, really hard to stop them.
So I did ask Twitter if what card, if you could print any card, and I'm asking our listeners as well, please comment below. If you could print any card into Modern right now with the goal of making Elves as good as Merfolk, exactly as good. So not better. Like you can't unban. I forgot the card again.
Glimpse of Nature.
You can't unban Glimpse of Nature, right? You can't. The goal. You can't print a 2020 indestructible hexproof elf for 1 green mana, right? Like, it has to be as good. It has to be the 13th most played deck in the format. What would you print? And I had my thought on what I would do, which is an elf lord. Maybe make it it's green black, 2 mana 0/4. Maybe it's a 1/4 or whatever. The goal though being 4, so if you want to get rid of it, you have to use an entire fury. All other elves gain undying.
Oh, interesting. I mean, that's a cool idea. Like it plays nicely into the fact that green has to work harder with the second color, but it still feels like it actually fits. I think that's interesting. I also think that the line between elves being not competitive and super good is a really thin line. I mean, Elves has been really good for a lot of years. It's gone through phases where it's a really powerful deck that's very popular that people love playing. It just so happens that right now it hasn't been given a boost in a little while, but it's got density and redundancy in a way that almost no tribe has. So it can get out of hand really fast. If you give it the right tool, I feel like Elves goes way past 13th. It gets way too good.
Well, and the point is that's why it's hard to target exactly that middle, right? I think though, to me, Elves' biggest weakness right now is that it's extremely soft to the removal that's very powerful in the format, while also having its A plan and B plan, which we've talked about is really important for any deck in Modern, but its A plan and B plan aren't really well suited, right? It's easy to tear apart both of their A and B plan, right? The ability to make as much mana possible by having as many things in play as possible is not hard to deal with in Modern. And while they're doing that, they're not using those creatures to attack you. They're using their creatures to double down on either that plan. That's easy to interact with. That's kind of why my idea with the Undying one was it's kind of a lord, so it helps with that beatdown plan. Maybe it lets you turn your Llanowar Elf if you can kill it somehow or sack it into a thing. But then also, more importantly, it protects everything from Fury, right? I designed that card in my head, which is why it's a 0/4, to fight against Fury more than anything else. But these are some of the cards, and Ben, I want you to rate, if we can both rate together, if we think it'll make Elves too good or this isn't good enough to do it. So the next one is of the exact same kind of idea. Mark Confidant on Twitter said Seedwin the Enduring, 1 black green legendary creature elf shaman. It has persist. Other elf creatures you control get +0/+1 and have persist. So it uses the persist mechanic versus the Undying one, and just makes up for the fact that every elf is an X1 by giving everything +0/+1. Do better, worse, good for where would you rate it?
I think that's pretty fair because it only gives +0/+1. So even when you do play it, it doesn't actually beef your board, which makes it and it costs 3, not 2, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's fine. I actually think that's not good enough. I think that's I think it's like a good extra piece. And I do think there's some cool stuff in there, like your Elvish Visionary effects and things like that. Getting them back and drawing another card is really good. But I also think that if you play that card and your opponent isn't blowing you out, they're doing something else and they're going over the top, then that card's kind of useless.
Yeah,
It doesn't.
I think like Savolan is who I want to compare this to, and Savolan. I think this needs to be plus one,
it is.
right?
What
Like,
do you mean? Sveiloon. I want to correct you because you've said it wrong.
never going to say that card name correctly. I think like it needs to be a Lord fully here, right? Like it needs to be building the creatures you're fighting against at 3 mana and gain some type of card advantage, which like maybe it's if like a creature dies on your opponent's turn or something, draw a card, which would be kind of interesting. But going to the next one,
I think if that card just costs 2, it'd be fine.
Yeah, 2 is also good. Yeah, for sure. This is from Jim at Frost, friend of the cast. Black 1/1 elf, enter the battlefield duress.
Okay, interesting. So a 1/1 for 1 that just duresses, so just duress on a stick. I mean, that might be a little good, actually.
I think that card's too good to be printed for Magic. I don't think it's an elf problem. I think it's a Magic. Like, I think it has to be a one in a black for an elf that did that. Is fine. Kitesail freebooter, right? In fact, that's standard. The maggot, whatever maggot. You normally it exiles, and if the creature dies, you get it back. So if it's going to cost 1 mana, and at a minimum has to do the Oblivion Stone kind of thing, where it like hides under the creature unless you kill it. And even then, I think it has to be 2 mana.
I think you could make it. That card could be black green hybrid. 0/1, do that until it leaves the battlefield. I think that you could, if you wanted to make an aggressive version of that card, you could make it black green.
I think that can't be in green. Hybrid cards are right, so that means any mono green deck gets Thoughtseize or gets duress, which is not. I agree. 1 black for a 0/1 that it gets tucked under is maybe the way it would work. If you wanted to make it black and it could be elf as a cute thing, I still think that maybe is too powerful. I think it needs to be a 2-drop. All right. Next, but I don't think that's too powerful for elves. I will give them credit there. I think that's too powerful for Magic. This is from Golgari Guy. 1 green for a creature elf shaman. This spell can't be countered. Green spells you control can't be countered. 4 green until end of turn. Each elf creature you control has base power and toughness of a 5/5 and becomes a dinosaur in addition to its other types. It's a 1/1. They then got responded to. Is this just Allosaurus Shepherd? They then did follow up being like, actually thinking about it, this won't work because Fury will kick Elves' ass. So it doesn't solve the problem at hand, but is a very good card.
Yeah, I mean, I got wrecked by Allosaurus Shepherd last week playing against Joe Johnson. It was rough.
There is a significant amount of people who responded with, wait, does this mean I have to print a card that makes elves worse because it's a better deck than Merfolk? It's not. I wish it was. That's what we're trying to do. All right, green black elvish gravekeeper. This is from Will of the Council. Green black elvish gravekeeper. Elvish gate gravekeeper. Casting cost green black creature elf shaman. Whenever an elf you control dies, reveal the top card of your library. You may put the card into your hand if it's an elf. Otherwise, you may put the card into your graveyard.
How much does it cost?
Green black.
And for a 2/2?
It is a 3/1.
I think that card's really cool. I think as a 3/1, it's probably a little pushed. I think that card's probably fine as a 1/2 or a 2/2 is my guess. It definitely is a little like the deck is super, super elf dense and it doesn't play that high of a land count. So because the problem with that is that now you get into card selection territory. Every time an elf dies, you're like basically surveilling, which that just feels a little pushed. I think a 3/1, like that creature being aggressive and also just like, I don't know. Maybe that's the thing that elves need. Maybe that's like
is this more powerful than Dragon Rage Channeler?
Well, Channeler costs 1 and is a 1/1.
Well, it's a 3/3 sometimes.
Yeah, and I mean Channeler is one of the most like I had a conversation with friend of the cast Andrew Brown a few weeks ago, and we were having the conversation about the best 1-drop I've ever printed. And I was saying that you have suggested before that Channeler like actually has an argument to be like at least in that conversation. And he like didn't flinch, right? He was like, yeah, for sure. It's like, he was like, it's like obviously Ragavan's better, but like by how much? You know, like Chandler's like in the top 5, right? It's like basically 1-drops. It's like
but that's a totally fine card to exist in Modern. So can elves get a 2-mana 3/1, which nowadays 3/1s are the poppers 3/2. This is like super weak to Fury, but it does draw you out of it, right? If they hit this and something else, you either get the Surveil 2 or not. I think there's an argument it could also just stick it, or it doesn't go to your graveyard. You scry version of it where it puts it on the bottom of the deck. You also draw the cards; they don't go in play. I actually don't think this card's good enough. I would be on the other side.
What if it was a 1-mana 1/1 version of it?
I think that'd be good enough.
Yeah, that's where I would go with it. I would play the 1-mana 1/1 version of it because I think you can curve out. It starts you out aggressive. Your opponent's like, okay, bolt your 1/1. You're like, okay, I die. Is it other elves or all elves?
All including itself.
So it dies, and then you get to look at the top, and either it replaces itself, which is fine. It's a good card, or it takes the land on the top of your library you don't want and puts it in the graveyard. Like, that's sweet. I'd play that card.
I would go even farther. I would make it a 1/1 for 1 that does this effect. But then if you have 5 lands in your graveyard or whatever, it becomes like a 4/4.
Sure. It gets the plus up version where that way, like, you're motivated to like skimp on lands and dump them.
Well, it makes it so not playing a lot of lands also negatively affects you, right? It does make like fetch lands a thing you have to play in elves now. So it could maybe not be lands, maybe it's creatures, or maybe it's elves themselves. If you have 5 elves in your graveyard, it's a 5/5, which is another key
I think
thing.
it's probably. I think we're it being like that big, a 4/4 or a 5/5. I think is too much. I think it being if you have 4 or more, if it's a 3/3, it's totally fine because the card without that ability is still just really good on its own.
3/3 trample.
Yeah, and fetch lands make it like it's going to be that really fast when you play that version.
That's what I'm saying. Not lands. Do make it elves, and then it makes it a little bit more thematic, right? Like when you have because then its ability doesn't. It puts the elves into your hand, but then it's the dying that makes it bigger in the long run. So you're not like milling it. I think it'd be a 3/3. Okay,
that's cool.
Next one, Ezeka's Oracle, green. When blank enters the battlefield, or when Ezeka's Oracle enters the battlefield, sacrifice 3 creatures.
Sorry. Go back. I just had one more idea of that card. It just came to me. If it was a 2-mana 2/2 version instead of the one, if it was black-green 2/2, same card, all the things we just discussed, it would like get +2/+2 if you had like 3 elves in the yard. Whenever an elf dies, 2 things happen. It triggers and it drain gains. It does the Shaman of the Pack thing. That's like thematically on brand with Shaman of the Pack. It plays into that version of the elf deck. Okay. And it also means that if they wrath you when you have like 7 elves.
Elf Blood Artist.
Yeah. It's like, and then it's like, that is like dope. That card's really powerful. And that card actually punches your opponent for like wrecking your board.
Yeah. For like Fury. Okay. You're losing 4 life. I'm gaining 4 life and I'm drawing 2 cards. Right. Yeah. Like that. Yes, I agree. That sounds sick. And then your opponent can just not do that. Right. Or just use a single targeted removal. They can waste their Fury on killing exactly that, which means they're down 2 cards. You're like up point. You're parity for half a card, maybe. And then they lose a life, you gain a life. I love that actually a lot. I agree.
Fighting with your 2-drop slot in your deck, which is that's like a competitive slot anyway. So that's pretty good.
All right, green legendary elf. Okay, so this is from Gamblet, the God of Distraction. Green legendary elf druid 1/2. Tap an untapped elf you control. Another target elf gets +1/+1 and gains hexproof until end of turn.
Oh, that's pretty cool. I mean, see, like that's what's cool about that card is that like, because doesn't that mean that if you have 6 elves in play, they can all tap to protect each other?
Yes.
If they're all untapped, they all get hexproof and indestructible as well.
+1/+1 and hexproof.
Yeah, I mean, what's good about that, and what's like cool about that card is that because you have to tap another one, it doesn't totally protect you during combat. It makes your combats like pretty tenuous. You have to really carefully plot out like what do you have back, and then your opponent's like, okay, I'll try to kill this one creature you have with this one targeted removal. You know what I mean? Like it's very like game of chess.
It plays really interestingly with the decisions that elves already has to make, right? Which is it's all of its creatures tap for mana. So like already you're now adding to the layer of like, do I attack or do I hold this up to cast a spell? Now do I attack? Do I hold this up to cast a spell, or do I hold this up to tap to protect my creature from removal spell? Right? Like, so you have. Yeah. I do like how its drawback in elves, and because it's elf specific, does make it a little less powerful on an effect that it ostensibly is Mother of Ruins with better combat design. Yeah, I really like that as well. This is from at AC_Alex. 1 green elf warlock 1/1. Other elves you control have protection from red and white.
1 green, 1/1. Other elves you control pro green white.
Yep.
It's a little weird. Pro white in green is odd. Pro red makes sense.
It's two best friends, right? Like green. It's like I have protection from my allies on the color pie. Like often green will have protection from blue black. So this is like kind of how sometimes green, like they'll do a cycle of like each color has protection from themselves. This is like a little bit of an extension on that.
Oh, right. Sorry. Red, green. Yeah. What am I talking about?
It's Naya, right? It's the Naya color pie.
I was thinking for a second that was one enemy, one friend. Yeah, that's cool. I mean, that's like really any of the protection from color things that are designed to like combat what exists now. They feel like lazier design. They would work. It's practical design, but it doesn't feel as cool or like exciting. But obviously the goal of this was to design something that would make it competitive, which is so I commend the design.
I think like obviously it's a sideboard card. I think it's a cute answer to it. I do think this like is a solution to the problem. I think I could see them printing this just as a cycle, like a red one that's all goblins get protection from green and black spells or green and black instances. Like I think it also like creatures or whatever. Like I think that's a cool thing that they could do for sure. I think it to your point, it's like the boring answer, but could work. It is swingy because it's kind of this hate card that doesn't do anything outside of specifically fighting against red white removals packages. But also those are the two best colors for removal in the format, other than and then so people that then like forces the format to black in a weird way for because elves gets good. This is from Barbarian Riddle, Barbarian Rid 1, Llanowar Resistor, green elf warrior. Llanowar Resistor has hexproof. If you control at least 3 other elf creatures, when a non-token elf you control would die, create a 1/1 green Llanowar elf creature token with tap add green 1/1.
And that's pretty sick. I like so it's a 1 mana 1/1 you said?
It's a 1 mana 1/1 that if you have if you have 4 elf creatures including itself, it has hexproof, and then whenever an elf dies, make a Llanowar elf.
I mean, I think what's cool about that is that making extra Llanowar elves in that situation is cool, but it's not that good for elves because everything in their deck, they're already playing so many elves, and they already have like the heritage druids and stuff. It doesn't actually, the fact that they're Llanowar elves is not that powerful. I mean, it is powerful, but it doesn't feel overpowered. But it does give you the protection, and your Elvish Visionary turns into Llanowar elf. Like, who cares, right? I feel like if you get blown out, you end up with some extra 1/1s, and that's fine. I think that that's a pretty cool card. Also, the fact like it's a 1/1 and it costs 1, so you're not going to have critical mass until turn 3 at the earliest. Which means if your opponent in the first 2 turns wants to Unholy Heat or Bolt or whatever, like they can just get rid of it. You know what I mean? That's how they want to play it. Yeah, I think that card's cool. I think it's probably right on the line. I don't know how much better it is than the 1/1 we have now that triggers once a turn and gets you a 1/1.
I don't think it solves the problem. I think it's good. I think that's a really cool card, right? And it's like really flavorful. But I don't think it solves. I don't think it's powerful enough to save the ability, right?
Yeah.
The next one is, and this will be the last one. Green elf shaman. And then for a green and sacrificing the creature, counter target activated or triggered ability 1/2. Now,
Fury's ability is when it enters the battlefield, not on cast, correct?
Correct. So you can counter the triggered the ETB part of Fury because evoke isn't a keyword. It's an alternative casting cost, right? It's not like cycling, so you can't counter that, but you can counter the ETB.
I mean, that's pretty good. It answers the question. I don't know. It's only kind of good against that though. Is the problem?
You can hit fetch lands.
It's a green 1/1 for 1.
It's a 1 green 1/2, and then green sacrifice it, counter target activated or triggered ability.
Yeah, I mean that's like fine, but like think about because you can play a 2-drop that does that, right? Like Modern has those cards. You can Shadow About somebody. You can trick bind somebody. Agreed. I mean, the fact that green has it makes it a little unruly, but also you're committing a lot.
Like think of it in Merfolk. Like I feel like if there's a 1 mana, 1 blue counter target activate, like you get rid of all 5 elementals get countered. You can counter planeswalker abilities. You can counter random stuff like Snapcaster Mage that we can debate if that's seeing play. You can counter Leyline Binding. You can counter any fetch land. You can counter. I think there's a lot of triggered and activated abilities in the format that are really. I think honestly, I would almost say you could make it not target lands, like target non-land.
I was just gonna say that when you mention that, right, counter target activated or triggered ability not on a land card or something like that, and then it's like totally fine.
Yeah, I think then that card is great for elves. Has a lot of really cool interaction that it does, but isn't maybe too good. I think without that, I think hitting fetch lands makes it too powerful. So I think
because it's like it's especially in an elf deck where like if holding open the green is supposed to slow you down in a deck that generates like tons of mana so fast, now you're just like, okay, I'm just gonna hold you hostage. This like
I think if it can target lands, it needs to be 1 in a green to sacrifice it. Like it has bind, right? But triggered and activated abilities. Or it has trick bind on it.
The other way you could do it is you go the other direction. It could be a 1 mana 1/2 just like it is, but it could be that ability is only live once you have 3 elves in play. So if it comes down on turn 1, you just kill it, and then they play elf, you just kill it. Like, doesn't have haste either. So like if their opponent plays one, you still have a chance to kill it before it's good.
That's another option. Is just not even just tap. And you have to tap green and tap it, and you do the ability so that you like can't use it as a beatdown strategy, or you sacrifice the ability to do that if you beat down.
Yeah.
I think there's a few ways to balance that, but I do like the idea of green getting a cool trick bind creature. I think this is itself being able to is too powerful. Once again, outside of elves, right? I think like a 1 mana creature that can 1 green sacrifice to eat a fetch land is maybe too strong in modern. But I think like making that cost 2 mana, making it cost 2 mana, and you can use 1 mana, making it, as you said, require you to have 3 elves or have it be a tap ability, so you can't use it at, it has to have summoning sickness and it can't do it if it attacked. There's ways to play around with it, I think, that are interesting. All right, so that was the last one. All right, you have one more thing you want to talk about.
Yeah, so I think we haven't done this for a few years. It was probably 4 or 5 years ago the last time we had a conversation about like what is the tribe, what is the pet tribe of yours that is not playable in modern that you wish had like the 2 or 3 more cards printed. And you could go vampires or zombies or something that's like common to talk about. It just can't be one that like is actually competitive. It has to be like non-competitive at the
moment. Can I answer with Noggles, the best creature type in Magic? Is that viable?
There'd have to be some heavy lifting for Noggles to be.
They just like Wizards, like these are going to be in standard. We are going to print Noggles as a modern viable tribal strategy.
True name, they just true name Nemesis, except it's just a Noggle.
We're like,
Noggle named Nemesis.
It's like it's they're all 1-drops. They're all 3/1s. They all have all other Noggles get +1/+1, but each one is like all Noggles get. They're like almost slivers. All Noggles get +1/+1, and then each one has protection from a different creature type, and then eventually or card type, and eventually you build. If you have all 7 of them in play, they all have Progenitus.
Voltron.
No, that's not my real answer. If we're talking like actual of like the real family, I think vampires is closest. Like if I was to bet on one, it would be vampires.
One that you want to see, like that's the one you're rooting for?
Oh no, I wasn't prepared for this question. What's your answer?
I was thinking about it as I watched you hem and haw. If you want to, I was gonna say we could always cut that out. You could think.
No, I like the hemming and hawing. We're gonna keep all of this into the podcast. People comment below what they would like, of course.
I think for me, I've said in the past, rogues. That was what I used to say because I used to love that tribe a lot, and they did print a bunch of cool rogues a couple years ago, and we haven't talked about this since. And like I played the blue black rogues historic deck, that build of my own on historic for like a solid few months. Did really well with it. Like one qualified for mythic for doing that. And that was really fun. It functions and plays not that different than a fairies deck in some ways. It's So I think that's one that's really interesting. But there's also like there's more fringe creature types that I think are really cool that I wish would get a boost. The problem is there's like Rogue was around for a long time because there was Fairy Rogue, there's Vampire Rogues and stuff. So when they finally printed like a really good Rogue Lord and a few cards, that deck all of a sudden could actually be viable. Like there are creature types that I think are really cool, like Myr. Like it would be sick if in like the next time we had like a Mirrodin set, we had like just a really cool good.
Less than 3 weeks away.
I know, but like a really, really cool like Myr thing where like all of a sudden Myr Superior was castable, not in like a silly way, like it was actually kind of good. And like I think what that boils down to is there isn't an artifact tribal creature type that is good enough to play. Like we haven't had that happen yet. Construct hasn't been like a deck. You know, it's like they're all kind of hard.
It's artifact is the creature type that ends up being the amalgamation of different things. I think for me, I would want a Myr Commander if I was going to pick a thing for Myr to be good. And I think Myr and Commander would be cool. There's no 5-color Myr Commander, right? I think that's like a thing that is actively missing in Commander. There's the Brunaclad or whatever, which is the blue-red, but they're not even technically a Myr. They like are Phyrexianized Myrs, so it's not even technically what you want. Like I think that's the thing that's missing. For me, I think I like now thinking about it. I think it's Pirate. I think that's a really cool. Honestly, and Merfolk mentioned vampires on the list that I mentioned. Any of the main creatures of Ixalan, right? Like either dinosaurs or pirates being like a modern viable thing. I think pirates are a lot closer, just because they like their design space is a lot more modern friendly, like or power friendly, right? Like treasures and kitesail freebooter, low to the ground attackers versus dinosaurs, which are, love a dinosaur, but they're 5 mana creatures normally.
I would love to see pirates pushed, and I think there's obviously I think we're going to get a shot at that the next time we
this time next year we will have been back to Ixalan, so I think all 4 of these groups will get. And if I'm Wizards and I'm going back to Ixalan, the plane that is famous for being beloved thematically, but power level missed the mark greatly, I'm coming back swinging. This is Ixalan 2, broken cards a loo.
I'll tell you the one other one that comes to mind that they have actually done a pretty good job of printing here and there, and they've just never pushed it, is Artificer. That's one of my favorites. Artificer is often like a subtype, and they're often like cool, uncommon 2-drops or whatever. They've just never made Artificer like a thing, like the sort of like Ethereum Sculptor, that type of creature. Like we haven't had a real driving force to play a deck that has an Artificer sub theme, which seems really fun to me. Those are some of my favorites that I would love to see like a little bit more attention paid to.
I agree. We didn't talk about them we didn't talk about for the fact that like humans doesn't have like, or white doesn't really have their like signature. I think like cats to me is what that is. That's another one that I think is like super close. I think I think humans has moved to a 5-color group. I think soldiers is a job. But if I were to pick, and I wish Wizards leaned into this more, I wish Leonin were more of a supported, and cats were a more supported like creature type synergy group in general. Because I think that A, they're super iconic. B, a lot of people relate to them. C, Johnny is obviously one of the more popular characters, RIP or RIC, rest in completion. But please don't attack anyone. Please just go nap, take a cat nap. But I think that cats are a really obvious one. I think vampires is another one that I think part of the problem vampires run into is that vampires and zombies kind of eat each other's space. But if they printed the right vampire aristocrat cards that like just really push it over the edge, I think there's a potential that vampires could get into modern. And I think zombies is really close. I think that like Gravecrawler is such a powerful card that any moment they could just print like sacrifice a creature, if they printed Phyrexian Altar on a zombie, I think like zombies becomes a tier 1 modern deck overnight, right? Just like sacrifice a zombie, make a black mana, right? Now you have like the infinite loop with Gravecrawler. Even as a 4-drop, I think that card is like makes zombies viable overnight.
Yeah, card's so sweet. I love Gravecrawler.
But yeah, I do want to hear from everyone below what they want. What creature type do they wish was like more pushed to be viable in Modern?
Yeah, let us know, guys. Thank you so much for listening to yet another episode of the Masters of Modern podcast. We'll be back next week. I hope you guys had a great Thanksgiving, and I hope you guys are looking forward to having an awesome holiday season this December. And let's close out the year strong. And
a reminder that all patrons get access to our exclusive altar sleeve, which is a cool artwork of me and Ben. There is anyone that was October, November, January, and December will all get that one, and then there'll be a new one starting in February. Also, make sure to check out altarsleeves.com, another sponsored podcast. Thank you so much to all of our listeners, our patrons, and you, Ben, for being my co-host. And we'll talk to everyone next week.
Bye, guys.
This has been a production of